Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Politics Today, and in this programme today we'll be discussing how next month in Parliament will be the biggest vote on abortion legislation in over 3 decades, with the possibility that we could see that our Health Secretary might vote for the decriminalisation of abortion. And in this programme today I'm joined by Melanie Symonds, the editor of Heart newspaper, together with Helen Spiby-Vann from the Christian People's Alliance. So ladies, warm welcome to the programme. Good to see you both. And I'll start off with you, Melanie. We got a new edition of Heart newspaper out for our viewers as well. So do you want to unpack some of the big stories that you covered in the past 2 months?
Well, thank you. Well, I was led to talk about Gaza again, and I think we've got a picture of the cover, and this was an exciting story. There's an Orthodox Jew who's actually said Gaza needs Jesus, and he wants Franklin Graham to go over and conduct campaigns, and he actually sees Jesus as being the solution, which of course we would. That's exciting. Oh yes, national news about the Methodists are more or less criminalising the use of the words husband and wife, but for their internal guidance they're recommending it's not used in other stories. We've got another page of Israel news, really useful facts there, and some updates on the hostages and Colonel Kemp. 2-page Chaos or Conspiracy by the wonderful Tony Pierce, talking about what could be ahead for 2024. This is really good coverage, actually. He covers a lot of things. It's very factual. And good book reviews by Revelation TV's Gordon, which I'm always very grateful for. And we've got some pro-Israel books and about the revival on the Isle of Lewis.
Excellent. And Helen, it's good to have you back on the programme. I just want to share with our viewers some of the latest campaigns and how you're gearing up for what is a very busy electoral year in 2024 with the London mayoral elections, the London Assembly elections, and of course Rishi Sunak could call a general election at any time.
Yes, that's true, and it's all very exciting. In the meantime, we're getting ourselves ready. So we had some candidate training. So we have a wonderful professional coach called Catherine Prentice, and she gives us amazing coaching. We're also making a video to reach out to churches to really try and engage candidates to come on board, to drum up support really with other Christians, because we're all representing the same values. And the other thing that we've been involved in, of course, is the election, the mayoral election with Maureen Martin in Lewisham. So she's standing as the mayor there. We've been doing some canvassing, very interesting conversations with people to be had, definitely.
Excellent. And Melanie, what are your thoughts on this extraordinary interview that the Daily Telegraph conducted recently with our Health Secretary, Victoria Atkins? And what did you make of thought that she could be voting for the decriminalisation of abortion as part of the government's flagship criminal justice legislation?
Well, my first thought is that she's very young and she has grown up in an era when abortion is normal and it's seen as a viable option for women with their career choices, and there is normally, well, it's just part of the culture and she can't see anything wrong with it, presumably. The concern I have, politically speaking, is where is the clear blue water between the Tories and Labour on this? I mean, why have a health secretary who says she might vote to decriminalise abortion whose health is she thinking about? Is she thinking about women's health, or is she thinking about the baby's health?
That's a big question. I think our viewers can answer that very well. And Helen, we see in this same interview that our Liberal Health Secretary, Victoria Atkins, has supported the decriminalisation of abortion before, which is the indication why in the Telegraph article why she could vote for the decriminalisation of abortion in this crucial vote next month in Parliament, but also that she backs buffer zones for abortion clinics. What are your thoughts on buffer zones as someone who's protested outside of these abortion clinics?
Yes, well, she has voted in favour of decriminalisation of abortion, as you say, up to birth for any reason, and also the pills by post. Now, in terms of the buffer zones, At this stage, they have not been made illegal, except for in the country. The idea of it going through Parliament was to make them all illegal, but that conversation has gone quiet at the moment, thankfully. No doubt it will come back. It was showing signs of going through, but then as we stand today, we are allowed to go and pray outside the clinics and give leaflets out, so long as obviously we wouldn't want to cause any big scene. Now, having said that, this lady has voted in favour of criminalising people like me who go to pray outside abortion clinics and hand out leaflets offering advice. So it's quite interesting how there's this tension here. On the one hand, she's wanting to decriminalise something, and on the other, she's wanting to criminalise something that really is offering help. So it's very concerning. Now, in my experience as a pavement counsellor, I've seen all kinds of things, and usually it's quiet, and we're there very prayerfully, considering and together. But there was one occasion when we decided to go to a North London, to try some work outside a North London abortion clinic, which is actually not far from where I live. And it was really interesting because we did about 4 sessions. This was because the Central London clinic had closed down, which we're really pleased about. But so we moved our protests or vigils to somewhere else. We just did it for 4 sessions. This was in 2022. In the summer, we had the contest for the Tory leadership with Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak. Now, what they were talking about, making the streets safer for women. And shortly after that, at the end of the summer, there was an article in a famous newspaper that's very, very well read. And it said there was these protests in the North London clinic, pro-lifers marching up and down the street on a Saturday mornings, empty pushchairs, and the manager inside the clinic was interviewed, and she said that, oh yes, it's terrible, it's so noisy, lots of things are being shouted, and the women inside the clinic are really worried. So I actually was so shocked to read this. I was so shocked. I thought, this is just in my neighbourhood. I haven't heard anything, and I'm interested in these things. So on my way home, I popped in and I spoke to the garage next door to the clinic, and I said, you know, can you tell me about these protests on a Saturday morning? What's been going on? They said, what do you mean? I said, you know, the protests, the pro-life protests outside the clinic. They said, no, there's nothing happening. I thought, what's going on? So I asked a parked up policeman. They were just there having a break. I said, could you tell me about what's been happening here on a Saturday morning? The protests, the pro-lifers, I showed them the article. I said, has anybody made a police report? They said, no. Now, this is significant because every time we do go to the clinic, the manager will usually call the police because it's just their habit. And the police will tell us, you have every right to be here. We already know that. So the fact that there was no report, there was no eyewitnesses of these loud protests, you see, this is what we're up against. There's a disingenuous agenda, really, to defame the pro-life protests. Now, something happened as well a couple of weeks ago in the Central London one. A man came along on his bicycle, parked it up, went across the road, started filming as I was just standing outside the door of the clinic. Just very quiet and peaceful. And then after 20 minutes of his filming, he came across and then he looked at me. He looked at the restaurant next door and he said, it must be very hard for this clinic, hard for the restaurant with the clinic there committing abortions. And I thought, well, that's not the sort of thing that a pro-life protester would say. And then he went up, buzzed the intercom and shouted rude things. I don't even want to say it on this programme, what he said through that intercom. The manager came out of the clinic and started shouting at him. He started shouting back. And a passerby in the street saw the rude things that he was saying against women and put 2 and 2 together and made 5. I said, they know us, they know we're peaceful. Other staff came out when he'd gone and said, what happened? I said, that had nothing to do with us, I'm so sorry. We would never do that. And she said, yeah. But anyway, he went. So there is this agenda, it's actually dishonest gain. The pro-choice campaigns, there's a very much misleading the public and policymakers. Now, the one that happened in the North London in 2022, it was months before they made the decision to put forward and carry forward the idea of buffer zones. So there's very much a strategic campaign going on to undermine the work of the pro-lifers. It's very, very disingenuous.
Yeah, and what do you think about the Health Secretary Victoria Atkins, who would want to personally bring criminal prosecutions against you and other Christians for having a prayer vigil or even praying outside an abortion clinic?
It's really, really concerning, because we are doing a beautiful thing to help women who are in trouble. We're helping the women. Actually, making it easier to access abortions is not really helping women, because an abortion is a symptom of really an exploitation of women. An unwanted pregnancy is really, at the core, is abusive. It's an exploitation of women. So these feminists really don't understand the dynamic here at all. And to actually want to criminalise, on the one hand you're saying it's absolutely appalling to criminalise a woman who's in this position and she's pregnant and she's had an abortion. It's awful. You can't possibly call that woman a criminal. But she has no problem calling somebody like me, who's actually helping, offering free help, because out of the love of God, to show the love of God, no condemnation at all. We love you as women. You're doing a marvellous job. You're carrying a baby. It's a miracle. For the person like me, who's actually encouraging women in the truth, would be criminalised for saying that. The world is really upside down.
No, absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing that, and you got our support. And yeah.
Can we see the page of little Ruby? Because this is to do with buffer zones. So we had a story in Heart newspaper in our December, January 21 to 22 paper, and that was just before the big day on called Missing Millions at the Emmanuel Centre. I just think little Ruby, she was 10 then, she's now apparently she's about 15, so I think that was an old photo I had of her, but she's a lovely girl now, and she was saved by a woman who stood outside the abortion clinic and shyly handed her parents a little picture of an unborn baby of about the same age, 10 or 12 weeks. And this picture had such an impact on the parents, who are normally uncoupled. They weren't married at the time. They'd been going out together for a month, and they thought this was a thing to do because they didn't know where their relationship was going, etc. And they went inside, and then they both said, we can't go through with this because this little picture was on their minds. And so the little girl was born. The parents aren't still together, but her grandmother is a Christian, and she wanted to meet the Christian lady who stood outside the clinic, and so they did. And then recently Ruby met this same lady who's also a grandmother and lives down in Brighton, who's another amazing and brave woman. And Ruby has been told the truth about how she came into existence, and she tells her teachers, because of so-and-so, I wasn't sucked out of my mummy's tummy. And I think if her story was broadcast nationally or in the Daily Mail or something, it's such a tearjerker, and this is the truth. This little girl is saying, I'm here because a woman stood outside an abortion clinic.
Also, what troubles me when I first came up for this topic, firstly, I wasn't aware that what we are approaching in Parliament next month in March is the biggest shake-up on abortion legislation for over 30 years, with the prospect of decriminalising abortion. So anyone who has an abortion at any stage of the pregnancy, even almost up to birth, will not be prosecuted by the law. And where the silence from the church is deafening, where are the emails of campaigns raising awareness of this? Because I'm afraid that if this legislation is passed, then we know from reading the book of Genesis, particularly the book, a story of Cain and Abel, how it was the blood of Abel that reached the Lord and said, you know, what Cain did, because his blood cries out. So we know, for example, that the shedding of innocent blood is an offence to God. It brings a curse. And yet this legislation, if it were passed, brings in a new darkness into our nation that we haven't seen before. And this is why I'm angry that I've only just learned about this. So what would you make of the fact that next month in Parliament, our parliamentarians are preparing to vote on the first major changes of the abortion law for more than 3 decades? They will be voting on 2 amendments. According to this one would decriminalise abortion after 24 weeks, and the other would lower the legal time limit from 24 weeks to 22 weeks. What are your thoughts on the practicalities of decriminalising abortion?
The practicalities are fairly horrendous and extremely messy. We've already got situations where women are being prosecuted, and this is the argument which Diana Johnson and I think Stella Creasy are using, but they've got it the wrong way round. They're saying, oh, it's not fair on women to be prosecuted, but it's also not fair on women not to have any deterrent. Radio 4 is already preparing the way. They broadcast a programme on Sunday late afternoon with 2 women's testimonies who've been prosecuted. One had illegally obtained pills by post, and this is the most common way that abortion is now happening since the lockdowns. That women can, that has not been rescinded yet. Women can still get pills by post. Now there's supposed to be a 10-week limit, but they're able to give a false identity and get the pills after that. And there was a Freedom of Information Act request which showed that, there was, I think it was Christian Concern, pretended to be pregnant women, and they phoned up and it wasn't difficult to get the pills because there's no way that you have to prove, you don't go and see a doctor to prove how old your unborn baby is. So it's all extremely messy. I'd like to say something about the viability of late-term babies. I've been the CBR UK Campaign for Bioethical Reform have very kindly sent me some statistics, and currently in UK law the unborn baby is only protected so long as they can survive outside the womb. This used to be at 28 weeks under the 1967 Act, but was reduced to 24 weeks in 1990. Now, with the decriminalisation, they're trying to bring it down to
22 weeks.
22 weeks, yes. But with advances in medical science, fetal viability has dropped further. So, according to a 2019 report published by the British Association of Prenatal Medicine, 3 in 10 babies born at 22 weeks, that's 5.5 months. So 3 in 10 babies born at 22 weeks, 5.5 months, can survive with help. And 2 out of 3 of those would suffer no serious disability. And by 24 weeks, this has increased to a survival rate of 6 in 10, with only 1 in 7 suffering a severe disability. And what came out in the Radio 4 programme was that the women who'd taken the pills by post at home were horrified when they then gave birth to what they euphemistically termed a pregnancy, which is what the term which the abortion providers use, but is actually a baby. And they were really shocked and horrified. One of the women was able to continue, and her baby, she now has a slightly disabled little boy, but he's doing well. And the other woman was just completely shocked to have given birth to a baby, well, to a baby in the loo.
And Helen, what are your thoughts on these proposals to bring about major changes in our abortion legislation? This is proposed by Diana Johnson, who's the Labour Party chairperson of the Home Affairs Committee, has tabled an amendment to the Criminal Justice Bill. Share what the decriminalisation of the abortion law will mean for unwanted babies, and could abortions happen right up to birth with no legal consequences?
Yes, it's very sobering, and I think it's important from the beginning really to say that laws are there to protect us. That's what they're there for. They're not there to sort of punish us, although if we don't have the penalty, then in a way the law becomes void and it's not effective, and it doesn't bring about justice either. So one of the important things about having a criminal offence as it is a criminal offence is to actually protect people from becoming victims of crime or perpetrators of crime. And actually, in this particular situation, you have women and babies who are affected, and parliamentarians really need to proceed with caution, because they're changing a law that's based on a law from 1861, the Act, Offences Against the Person Act, which has been tried and tested for many, many years. The two sections that Diana Johnson is hoping to remove are section 58 and 59. And these sections make it an offence for a woman to procure drugs or an instrument to abort a baby. So this recognises the sanctity of life, that everybody is equal. For example, a mother who absolutely is a treasure for our world. You know, it's a miracle every time when a woman is giving birth. So Diana Johnson is proposing to remove these, which will remove the protections, basically, remove all the protections, so that a woman will be able to have an abortion really at any time up to birth, and there would be no measures at all to either warn her. There'd be no messaging that this is a dangerous thing that you're doing. The whole thing about a criminal offence is this is dangerous, it's harmful for our society, it's harmful for people. So if you take away the penalty, what you're left with really is a guideline, and the guidelines in themselves are not strong enough to make sure that people take notice of them. And this is what we've been seeing with the pills by post. It's so easy to get them, and it's so easy to bypass the rules. Even though the law is still there, it's very easy to breach the law, and to the detriment of women and society, and obviously families and children are torn apart. So it's not really something that we should be looking forward to at all.
Melanie, why is there such a political agenda around the topic of abortion? And according to the Daily Telegraph, Miss Atkins, as a junior minister for women in 2018, voted in favour of decriminalisation of abortion. And according to my notes here, the Telegraph found that 17 out of 22 members of Rishi Sunak's cabinet had previously voted for measures that favour the liberalisation of abortion. What does this tell us about the moral makeup of Rishi Sunak's cabinet?
Well, it's not from our point of view, it's not a positive moral makeup at all. I mean, I don't think the word moral comes into it at all. I mean, someone like Jacob Rees-Mogg, who I think is no longer cabinet minister, he, as a Catholic, is very pro-life and open about it. As for the rest, 17 out of 22 voted for measures that favour greater liberalisation of abortion. It leaves one speechless, really. I can only think that, although voting on abortion is always a free vote for conscience, it certainly hasn't been a yardstick by which Rishi Sunak has chosen the cabinet. But I suspect underneath the Tories are just trying to look modern and relevant. That's the only excuse I can think of.
Unless they are pursuing a globalist agenda, and we'll see this this legislation being pushed through various European parliaments across the European Union, even the potential of trying to push this in the United States and in North America as well. And it's very disturbing. It's very, very disturbing, the fact that we can have senior ministers and a health secretary who actually wants to, and has indicated that she wants to, in this up and coming election, vote for the decriminalisation of abortion. What are the consequences of this, Helen, as an expert in this field? Is there a great danger now that young, vulnerable, impressionable women will now have abortions almost up to birth?
Yes, I think there's a real risk of that. Although we have been told that the guidelines, the laws will still remain, but without any penalties, then it's actually quite hard for people to always do what's safe and legal without those kind of barriers there as a disincentive. I know Melanie mentioned before about the cases that are actually being highlighted at the moment of women that have been criminalised recently, and it's interesting that these, we say recently because they are recently, over the 160 years since the 1861 bill came out, the Offences Against the Persons Act, we've hardly seen any women being criminalised at all. And the reason why is because of the relaxation and the pills by post, which makes it easier, as you hit the nail on the head, it makes it easier for women to access abortions that are unsafe. And it's very, very worrying that this is going to be a trend that we're going forward. It's not something to look forward to at all.
Right. And we've got 3 minutes left of the programme. I've got 2 very important questions to ask before we finish the programme. So my first one to you, Melanie, is for any woman watching this programme that has had an abortion and has that guilt and the shame, share with us how there is complete forgiveness in Jesus Christ and how they can be covered and cleansed by the blood of the Lamb, and they shouldn't live in fear regarding this.
Well, this is the great wound in society which isn't acknowledged, and it is not doing women any good. Back in 2 or 3 decades ago, I was commissioned to write this book for SPUC, Society for the Protection of Unborn Children, and it's all about testimonies of women who had had abortions and they didn't believe the propaganda, they knew things weren't right afterwards. Some of them had real psychological trauma. There is a form of post-traumatic stress disorder which manifests in various ways. But these women then went to the pro-life organisations to get help. And I just want to read one little thing. I've had to forgive every single person involved in Anna's abortion, all the doctors, nurses and the BPAS counsellor. I'd wanted them to experience my pain to understand it was my baby. But if you hold on to bitterness, it's only you who suffers. There is healing available. There are organisations which will help, like CBR UK that I've mentioned. There's an online course, and these women found complete forgiveness and release in Jesus.
Wonderful. So Melanie and Helen, thank you so much for joining me for this week's edition of Politics Today. I want to thank you for watching at home. I personally feel so distressed that we have this legislation which will bring about major changes to abortion legislation in over 3 decades that could include the decriminalisation of abortion. Our church is silent. I mean, this is a topic that weighs heavily on the Lord's heart, and that's the shedding of innocent blood. If we are quiet, apathetic, indifferent, then we're compliant. And so therefore we need to speak up and inform our members of Parliament about this outrageous proposal of legislation. So thank you for watching this week's edition of Politics Today.